Hi, welcome back. So we are in the practical session to explore technical and practical skills that we've learned about the second pillar of analysis, and that is a descriptive model. Now, I assume that your understanding of preparing this data set based on data preparation guidelines, imagine this is a problem from Learn project. If you're not aware of what I'm saying, maybe you need to check out the material of the first book, Research from the Start to the End. Variables happens to be related to your problem. So I got 6 variables, and then I have 19 subjects, and then I start the measurement on each one of these variables. Now, first thing we need to understand, what are the type of variables that we have in here? So the GRE score, continuous value, and the TOEFL score as well, it's a continuous. The university rating as an ordinary, also the GPA, and then we have the research and nominal format as 1 or 0. Finally, chance of admit, it is in the form of continuous. Most people try to jump into the analysis part. That's not a correct approach in my opinion. The first thing we need to see, what is my research question? And based on the research question, you will be actually deciding on how to start. But basically what I want to tell you, our main focus and target will be around this research, which has a value of 1 or 0 and chance of admission. Perhaps we want to form some research question based on this case. Let's just start first of all with our univariate analysis. Now, how many of those continuous kind of values? We have the GRE, we have the TOEFL score, and we have chance of admission. So I was able to capture, for example, the mean is one of the central tendency measure aspect, then the median as well, and the mode. Now, standard deviation, which is driven from the variance, and then the IQR and the range between minimum and maximum, all this, it helps me to capture 2 important things. The first thing is the dispersion, and of course, the distribution as well. More important, I split the data set into people who didn't do research and people who did research. You have 2 groups, the 0 group and the 1 group, and the mean score of the people who didn't do their research, the GRE score, was 313.714, whereby the people who did their research, their average mean was 322.25. So you could see there is a difference. The median here happens to be 314 for the case of people who did the research, 323. Seems to be in the people who didn't do research, there is no mode actually has been captured, but 307 really captured in the people who did the research. So there is a mode for the people who did their research. Now, if you want to look at the variance, as we said before, maybe reading the variance and so on, that's why we captured the standard deviation. Happens to be 6 between the people who did the research, 8 on the others. The IQR measurement of their dispersion, which is the difference between the Q3, the Q1. But the important I wanted you to see is the minimum to the maximum values. Do I see really different between this group in terms of their GRE according to what I am reading? I cannot really tell it is that massively exist. In the TOEFL score, I can't really tell a huge differentiation between people who did research or didn't in terms of their TOEFL score. But look at the chance of admission. But I want you to look at the minimum and maximum among the people who didn't do their research. Their chances less than half, 45%, maximum 68%. But the people did their research, their chances between 52%, it's more than half, to 92%. So I think you can easily see that this variable, chance of admission, and its relation to did you research or you didn't, they have a very, very quite obvious relation. But now let's take a next step by graphing those relations. Now, if you look at the first graph, this is the TOEFL score. And this is the TOEFL score box plot. So if I look at the 2 groups, and down here the group who did the research didn't, I can easily spot the people that did the research. Their TOEFL score is higher than the maximum people who didn't. Perhaps the table was quite not as much clear to you, but now by looking at the graph, I can easily see the difference even in the GRE score, but more intuitively to see the real huge difference between the 2 groups in terms of their chance of admission. Let's try to do univariate analysis on the case of having a discrete kind of a value, like the GPA and the university rating, also the research. Now, if you look here at this table, it's the contingency table of proportions, where we have the GRE score, 5 levels.
According to chi-square value, there is a difference in the distribution of number of students who scores 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those are the possible outcome of the variable. And it's obvious once we look at the table. Also for the CGPA score with 3 different outcome, the chi-square tells us there is a difference in number of students who have those scores, 7, 8, and 9. We can see that clear in the table as we read.
The last one I did is the research as well. So the research for the 2 groups, these are the distribution, 36 and 63%. Let's look at bivariate analysis part. Now, in a bivariate analysis, I have decided to take the chance of admission across the GRE score. This is my GRE score. And then I wanted to split in terms of the 2 groups who did the research or didn't do. So the people who did their research seems to score higher in the GRE score and also higher a chance in getting to the university. And the people who didn't do their research, they seems to be in this zone. You could see by looking at this graphical presentation that really there is a relationship between doing your research or not doing your research and getting a chance to be admitted to the university or not. Also, the chances for the people who got a higher GRE score and they did their research, like this group of people, they have a higher chance of admitting to the university rather than the people who actually didn't. Because these guys, they didn't really do good. The blue color, you could see, they have a poor performance, plus they didn't do research. TOEFL score. Now, again, you can see the pattern around this group, a higher TOEFL score, and they did their research as one. They're more likely actually with a higher chance to join the university. So this is a multivariate. So I'm bringing 1 variable, 2 variable, 3 variable at the same graph. One more analysis that I brought to you, 2 kind of a discrete values. So we got the university rating and the research has been done or not. We were relying on the idea of calculating the chi-square between them, indicating a positive relationship that the more you have a rating, higher rating, the more chances that you have actually done your research. So being done with your research, more likely to have a higher score, in other words to say. And based on the chi-square, I calculated also the Kramer's V, which happens to be 65. It's a large effect. And also I graphed this. It's quite obvious. Their colors are completely missing from the people who didn't do their research. So you couldn't see a red color here, you couldn't see a dark green color. So most likely your rate was around 1, 2, and 3. But the guys who did their research more likely to occupy the larger scoring. Same thing I did with the GCP Kramer's. It's a quite medium effect. And you can see actually from the graph as well. So there's quite a bit obvious that the relation is not that much strong. It's a medium effect. Finally, also I calculated the correlation matrix between continuous values like the GRE, TOEFL, and chance of admission. I calculated both correlation, the Pearson and Spearman's. If you remember the Spearman's, in the case, you don't have a normally distribution kind of a variable. So the TOEFL score to the GRE, they have 81% correlation values, but 77 in terms of Spearman's. Obvious strong relation. And then you have the chance of admission with the GRE score was 63, Spearman's was 612. A chance of admission related to the TOEFL, having you a good TOEFL score, is 68%. So you could see from here that the TOEFL score and GRE score seems to be actually quite strongly correlated. I mean, the one who got a higher GRE most likely to get a higher TOEFL score, which quite makes sense. So that was the end of this practical example to look at this data set and do your analysis. I hope the idea of creating that kind of a descriptive and these assumption that we just made on this data set need to be sensed and need to be tested. And that's exactly the next things that we need to look at, and that is to create an inferential model based on this descriptive model that we come up with so far. That's exactly what we're going to do next. I will see you then.